Starbuck or whether I'm Grace and she's, what's her name? But you can maybe figure that one out. And the second thing is that this paper really had another title, but she felt like that perhaps it wouldn't be in good taste to say that at a conference at USC. So I will tell you what the title is, and you'll have to look at the book draft to see what our real title is, which is All This Has Happened Before, Gender and Religion in Saving Grace and Battlestar Galactica. And I'm setting my own timer so that everybody won't be mad at me. And that way I'll get through this okay. And I can't take the claim for this first line, but I think it's one of the best lines I've ever heard anybody write. Smoking, drinking, and buck naked fornicating. We would say buck naked in Texas, even though it seems like it's a double thing. Detective Grace Hanadarko's 2007 television debut ripped through the summer rerun blogs with a potty-mouthed character far removed from traditional female leads. Following TNT's Monday night hit The Closer, Saving Grace similarly featured a sexy blonde cop with a thick Southern accent. But unlike Brenda Johnson or any other television law enforcement official, Grace Hanadarko has a last chance angel named Earl, a redneck redeemer who literally sweeps her off her feet, alighting on a remote mountaintop where her spiritual zingers melt into thin air. Although reviewers nixed the supernatural twist, viewers related to Grace's dark night of the soul. That dark night deepened when, in the last scene of the first season, Grace pointed her gun at the priest who had repeatedly molested her as a child. Coincidentally, Saving Grace debuted several weeks after Kara Thrace, another small-screen bad girl, had died, been resurrected, and then gone on an extended hiatus with the rest of the Sci-Fi Channel's Battlestar Galactica crew. Like Grace, Kara, also known by her pilot call sign Starbuck, is a blonde spitfire with more machismo than most of her male colleagues. She drinks heavily, smokes cigars, and enjoys casual sex. Unlike Grace, Kara does not have a guardian angel, but she does have an avatar that, appearing both in her flesh and her dreams, avows her special destiny. Kara, the best pilot fighter in Galactica's fleet, runs from this destiny until, depressed and delusional, she embraces her fate and flies into a maelstrom. Her craft explodes, but in the last seconds of the season finale, she appears with the good news that she can lead the fleet to Earth. Our essay explores how television can augment, supplement, and supersede paradigmatic constructions of religious, particularly Western and Christian womanhood. For the past 2 millennia, women's religious options have been strictly defined. Women were rarely depicted as religious authority figures, nor did they wield much spiritual clout unless they, of course, were telling somebody else that they had a calling for God and they were charismatic, and usually that meant you smelt burning flesh or somebody got drowned at the stake. Neither bishops nor popes, rarely prophets or preachers, women occasionally became saints, typically after gory, gruesome martyrdoms. Of course, many times they subverted these constraints, often with dire results. But religion has played a role in ingraining gender roles, establishing women's and men's relationships of spirituality, sexuality, and power, shaping what they can say and what they may do and how they define themselves. And this also happens on the television screen as well. But with Kara and Grace's lives, we get an alternative. Rather than accepting these traditional prescriptions of a holy woman's role, the strength of these characters, despite the brokenness and the rambunctious behavior, is that their stories are redemptive. They stand as counterparts to female friends and colleagues who follow a more conventional path to redemption. And they hold out hope and elicit empathy from viewers hungry for new perspectives on both women and religion. By exploring Kara and Grace's calling, their religious worlds, and the ways in which their spirituality is refracted through gender, we hope to show how embodiment and performance of religious calling on television resonates with understandings of spirituality, sexuality, and power in real life. Accordingly, after reading the texts themselves, we turn to fans' response to characters and plots in order to illustrate how, in Robert Orsi's formulation of Live Religion, viewers use the series to make and unmake their own worlds. We'll also look just briefly today at Grace's and Kara's alter egos because in addition to their blonde machismo and special destinies, both have female colleagues and friends with strong, if more traditional religious callings and also maybe a little less blonde in the bottle. Grace's friend, Retta, is an Oklahoma City Police Department criminalist whose Roman Catholic faith sustains her through personal and professional challenges. Kara's civilian boss is President Laura Roslin, political leader of Galactica's fleet, and who also has some interesting sort of physical, behavioral, and professional traits. Handsome brunettes, their competence and conscientiousness bespeak emotional maturity that seems to be absent in Grace and Kara. Despite working full-time, they also serve as mothers. Retta has 2 young children. Laura functions as a matriarch for the post-nuclear remnants of a human civilization. Both are comforting, nurturing presences whose applications of dry humor mitigate the rigorous standards of right and wrong. The women of Battlestar and Galactica and Saving Grace were conceived within a post-feminist world where women's sexuality is openly discussed, although rarely in an empowering manner. Rather, women who are publicly sexual, as opposed to sexy, are subject to exploitation, marginalization, and or shame. Where sexuality appears to make a woman strong, it is usually because she uses it to coerce or manipulate. Conversely, strong women, women in positions of power, are not supposed to be sexual. Thus, although the depictions appear to fit classic categories of Madonna, Laura, and Retta, and whore, Kara and Grace, the characters also subvert traditional religious stereotypes for women. Stand-ins for contemporary uncertainties surrounding changing gender norms, these representations, abetted by new media technologies that enable the discussion, dissection, and rearrangements of characters and plots, encourage viewers to overlay old paradigms with new realities. As a result, even the most hackneyed plot lines, Grace and her fellow cops solving a kidnapping, or Laura's supporters stealing an election, can reflect the contested interplay of gender within ethics, agency, and authority. How does a faithful woman behave? What is her responsibility to others? Which of her various personas is her real and true self? Where does sexuality fit into these public personas? Kara, Laura, Retta, and Grace hold a mirror to our deepest hopes and darkest fears, reflecting back the challenge of being a strong, sexual, spiritual woman. And now what I want to do is talk a little bit about each one of these characters very quickly so that you can kind of get a sense of how this plays out in the TV shows. The players change, the story remains the same. Leoben, Conroy, flesh and bone. For Starbuck, there's a part of this about a calling, about Kara and Grace's stories. How do we know what calling is? Calling is supposed to be a supernatural thing that happens to you outside of your life. It's all through Western literature. If you look through Old and New Testament scripture, people are being called. If you listen to evangelicals talk today, they talk about a calling or telling about their testimony. But how does this get rendered on television? In Battlestar Galactica, calling is a hybrid, in the midst of a hybrid kind of religion. The religion is based on Greco-Roman myths, Christianity, Egyptian religion, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're tracking the story of the troops as they go through these lost tribes, the 12 colonies of Cobalt, who have been destroyed in the nuclear holocaust. They're trying to figure out what is happening to them. And so in the midst of this, Laura Roslin arises as the next president. And because of this, there's a calling that happens. And the calling happens in the midst of a prophetic place. And let me talk about that for a minute. The calling comes from within these colonialist religious traditions. She is a fulfillment of a sacred scriptural prophecy. She's a secular figure, the colony's Secretary of Education. She becomes the president because she's the highest ranking government survivor, and following protocol, she assumes the presidency. What everyone does not know, however, is that she has terminal cancer. And her calling manifests itself after she takes Kamala, a medicinal plant that reduces the pain of her breast cancer. Among the drug's side effects are hallucinations, for which Laura begins as dreams. In the episode Flesh and Bone, she encounters a Cylon whose fate she had foreseen in a dream. In the hands of God, she sees 12 writhing snakes during a press conference. When she tells the priestess Alosha about her vision, the other woman assumes it is a put-on. Alosha, you're kidding me, right? You read Pythia and now you're having me on. Rosalind, no, who is Pythia? Alosha, one of the oracles in the Sacred Skulls. 3,600 years ago, Pythia wrote about the exile and rebirth of a human race. And the Lord anointed her and gave to be a leader to guide the caravan of heavens to their new homeland, and unto the leader they gave a vision of serpents, numbering 2 and 10 as a sign of things to come. Rosalind, Pythia wrote that? Alosha, she also wrote that the leader suffered a wasting disease and would not live to enter the new land. But you're not dying, are you? Laura is dying, of course, and that fact changes everything. Says Alosha, you made a true believer out of me. I know you are the one to lead us to our salvation. And what happens as a result of this is because she looks at an aerial map and she sees ruins and she knows that they need to go and get this arrow so that they can continue to try to find Earth. And this is where the entrance of Kara Thrace, or Starbuck, comes in, because she asks Kara Thrace to go and retrieve this arrow. Now, in the midst of this, Kara is also charged. Kara's act, because of what she does, ends up with the result of Laura being thrown into prison. She's supported by the civilians, and this prophecy sort of takes over everything for her in a certain sort of way. And this sacred scrolls that give the trajectory of her calling, of this journey from a skeptic to a convert, end up making this wounded healer, a wounded leader as well, and it also has a Christian resonance. The indisputability of this call, as well as the 7 to leave 12 colonies, okay, to Earth, have Jewish antecedents. Now, Kara's call is a little bit different, and if you